Millersville Borough Council to order at 6 o'clock. This meeting is being live streamed. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. At this time, we are going to have the mayor do some presentations of service recognitions. So,
Thank you
Mayor.
very much. How's everybody doing this evening?
That's grand.
Excellent. Something I started doing a couple years ago to recognize our employees of the borough that do so much for us, and we don't even realize how much they do. They're the ones that keep everything going, everything above board, double checking everybody, make sure things are working properly. But I just want to recognize a few people, and unfortunately they're on here, but I am going to leave their names out, and I'll make sure that they get these certificates later. So for 1 year, Julie Fry has been with us, helping on the admin team side. We have an officer who started a year ago with us, Spencer Rios. He's now completed 1 year on the job with us, and he's been doing a fantastic job. Also another part-time officer, Jason Flood. He's also a full-time officer with Millersville University, and he's dedicated a lot of time to the borough. So, congratulations to those three for 1 year. We have 2 officers, and of course with their shifts that they're working, going to be with us. Jason Turner, who's also our school resource officer. He is celebrating 10 years with us, as is Alan Anderson. Most of you know Alan. He's also with the CERT team with Lancaster County. So we congratulate both of those gentlemen for 10 years serving our borough. And for those of you who were able to join us last Friday, we celebrated some retirements. As you remember the last meeting, Officer Matt Hammer retired. He is officially done with us now. Unfortunately, he's on to another job already. But this Friday, we're losing another very dedicated person that's been helping very instrumental in the police department side, Dorothy Young. Most of you know Dorothy. She's been here for 23 years, and she'll be leaving us on Friday to move on to retirement. So this will be presented to Dorothy probably tomorrow morning. I want to recognize these folks for their service to the borough, and especially Dorothy for 23 years, and the other folks. So we'll see if they get their certificates. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. It's wonderful to have these people giving so much service to our community, and we appreciate it. And I think it's really nice that you honor them this way, because this is something special and they should be recognized. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
At this time, we will move on to the approval of the council minutes. I assume everyone has had them and an opportunity to read them, so I would entertain a motion for approval of the minutes from the last council meeting.
I was not present, so I don't want to make the motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made by Mike and seconded by Linda to approve the council minutes from July 23rd. All those in favor, is there any discussion? Sorry. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Then the motion is carried. At this time, council will hear any comments, requests, or concerns from members of the public related to items on the agenda or other matters. You will have 5 minutes to speak. Please either come to the microphone over here to speak or ask that the microphone be brought to you. Please give your name and a general address for the record. Is there anyone who wishes to address council this evening? Nobody? Okay, then we will move right along. Thank you. Finance Advisory Committee. That would be, the chair would be Joe, and he is not here this evening. I am the vice chair, so can we move ahead with that?
Do you have
have enough members to fill.
No, we don't.
You
No,
would
we
have
don't,
to.
from that committee.
Then I would put it to you, if you want to go forward, you can, you just can't vote on anything, or we can table it.
I'd say we table it till next time, and then everyone will have an opportunity to weigh in. So that will be done at a later date. Personnel Advisory Committee meeting. Darlene?
Yes, so, just to get a little roll call on who is part personnel up in here, we've got Miss Mary Ann, we've got Miss Linda, and Mr. Mike. And I just wanna, if we're not voting on anything or doing anything, I just wanted to give an update. I know a couple months ago, Mayor and the chief had brought up about the problems that we're having with the crossing guard program, how we're having a hard time maintaining the crossing guards. We have, I think there's 4 positions, we have 2, we need 2, and it comes down to their safety. They're not feeling very safe out there, people are not giving them much regard, and there's been a couple like close calls for them that they don't feel comfortable. So the ones that we did have in place are not coming back this year. So currently we are working on trying to figure out what our options are. And the 3 options that we're looking at is having the program fully switched over to the school district, which would then relieve the police department from that responsibility, because even the police department themselves don't have enough employees and are having a hard time maintaining with people who are retiring and that kind of stuff. So whenever there is a vacancy with the crossing guards, the police department then has to fill it. So it's a whisper down the lane type of problem. Problem here creates a problem here, creates a problem there. So it'd be great if we can fully switch it over to the school district and let it back into the school district's hand to be their responsibility. Another thing that we're looking into is actually subcontracting a third party. Rebecca's looking into pricing. She's gotten a couple pricings so far, which are like crazy different. So the third quote would be a big tiebreaker. And then the third one would be actually hiring a school bus. It probably would only take 1 school bus, but it would alleviate the need for that program altogether. And then the school bus would come pick the kids up and bring them to the school safely. So we have a meeting this coming Friday. The superintendent, Dr. Gale, is also going to be part of that meeting, and hopefully we'll have more to report next meeting.
I have a question. Is it the main concern, the one on Manor and Lehman, is it?
It is the main concern. That's where it's the most, where the crossing guards themselves, the ones that are there, have felt less safe there. It just seems like people just don't regard any of their.
Okay, so when you're saying, one question, when you're saying a bus, does that mean just for those students that are going through that intersection?
For the borough itself. So there would be no more walkers, no more need for crossing guards. It would just be.
Everybody gets picked up in a
school
bus?
would go through, and it's just for the borough.
And would that be the district's responsibility, the bus?
Yeah, well, we're trying to make it their responsibility, yes, and so we're.
Since they have the bus company.
Right, exactly, right. So, this is the first time I'm gonna get a chance to speak to Dr. Gill on Friday. Rebecca will be there, so, we'll lay all that stuff out on the table.
I'm also curious, is there no recourse when somebody runs a light or tries to knock them off, or?
There's plenty of recourse, but unfortunately, the recourse that we don't want is somebody's safety. So if a kid gets hurt or the crossing guard gets hurt, I mean, that's.
But when somebody's doing this, because obviously somebody's doing this, shouldn't that vehicle either have the license plate taken down or those people be brought for, do they know who these people are?
I'm sure there's stuff that can be done if they're caught, whatever. But again, the main focus is safety, and I'd rather the kids be safe than somebody
And I would really rather that people would get a ticket or something if they're not obeying. I mean, if we can't get the school bus.
Right, yeah, we're looking at the options, we're in no means have any solutions at this very second. We're just throwing options on the table and trying to figure it out.
Okay.
Does anyone else from the Personnel Committee have any comments they'd like to make or questions? So, is that everything then, Darlene?
That's everything.
Okay, thank you. Next is Public Welfare and Public Works Advisory Committee meeting. First of all, Mike, Darlene, myself, and Linda are the 4 members from council that serve on public welfare and public works. And I want to thank all of you for making a special effort last week to come out on Wednesday night to the planning meeting. I think that is a very important thing for us to be doing under the circumstances of everything that's happening in the borough. And then I will allow the president to slide on up here. And I will just continue because I'm up anyway. So that's the roll call, the 4 of us. And the first thing that we're going to have, but we may have to delay it, is the code enforcement monthly report for June and July, because Rob went out and he's not back yet.
Yeah, he is dealing with a zoning question that hasn't sort of happened this evening, but I'm happy to answer any questions about the report.
Okay,
It was provided in the backup.
right, does anyone from the committee have any questions about the report? Usually I can honestly say that it's always very, very well done, and I don't think we usually have any questions. So do I hear a motion out of committee to approve the code enforcement monthly report?
I'll make a motion to approve the
It's been moved by Darlene and Mike second, and so all those in favor from our committee, please signify by saying aye. Aye. So the motion is passed out of committee to accept the code enforcement monthly report. Now, the next item on the public welfare agenda is a presentation on vacant property reinvestment program, Lancaster Redevelopment Authority. And this is something that, you can come on up a while, this is something that we are looking at in the borough in order to eliminate or work with vacant and dilapidated or whatever properties. And we had learned that the Lancaster Redevelopment Authority could in fact help us in some way. So your name is?
My name is Sean Crumpy. I'm the Community Development Program Manager with the Lancaster County Redevelopment Authority, Land Bank Authority, and Vacant Property Reinvestment Board.
Thank you, Sean. And if you would go ahead, thank you.
Sure. So just to be clear, the Vacant Property Reinvestment Program is a formally established program under urban redevelopment law, and it falls, as we mentioned before, under the umbrella of the Lancaster County Redevelopment Authority, so it's staffed by Redevelopment Authority staff. So through this program, municipalities can submit vacant and blighted properties for consideration, and they would eventually be considered blighted under urban redevelopment law through the standards that I'll discuss in just a second. So as I mentioned, though the properties can be formally, not yet, this is fine for now. Though properties are formally given the status of blighted through the program at its end, and may be taken via eminent domain if they have this blighted status, I want to be very clear, the true purpose of the program is to have the property owners come back and rehabilitate or remediate those conditions themselves that we identify as blighted. We don't like to take properties, that's not the purpose of the program, it's to rehabilitate the properties and bring them back to productive use. Though eminent domain is an option if they choose not to rehabilitate the properties after a number of notifications, as I'll show in a second. So you can go ahead. So what does it mean for a property to be blighted? Again, this is a legal program. It's a legal procedure established through urban redevelopment law. So there are specific elements of blight that must be present at the property. So at least one of these elements of blight, there's 11 obviously, you might not be able to read those and there's no need to go through each one right now. But just to be clear, there are specific elements that have to be present at the property. So at least one of these has to be present at the property in order for it to be considered blighted. Additionally, as the name of the program indicates, the property has to be vacant. So you can't submit occupied properties even if they exhibit these conditions of blight. They have to both exhibit conditions of blight and be vacant. So you can go ahead. These are just more of those elements of blight. Again, I'm not going to go over all of these. There's going to be a few slides that there's a lot of words because again, this is a legal procedure that we're going through. You can go ahead. So the first step in the program, as I mentioned before, is the municipality submitting the property into the program. This is done through the Vacant Property Reinvestment Program application found on our website. You can go ahead. And just here's an overview of the application. It's not super complicated. You'll provide a little bit of information on the property, indicate those elements of blight, whichever ones are present at the property. As you'll see on this page, we also like to have some photos, though we do have our inspectors visit the property as well to confirm that those conditions are actually present from the property's exterior. Obviously, we don't enter the properties when we go out. Then you'll provide a little bit more information about the property and finally some information about your municipality. Then you just submit, at which point it would be taken in front of our board for initial consideration. After we visit the property, we would say, is this truly blighted? Are these conditions really present from the property's exterior? You can go ahead. And again, like I said, a lot of words. This is a legal procedure that we're going through. I'm not going to go through all of these steps. This is just to indicate that, as I mentioned earlier, the purpose of the program is to have the property owner remediate the conditions. So numerous times after each step in the program, each blight determination resolution, we notify the property owner that their property is going through this process and what will happen if they choose not to rehabilitate the property. So we work to find out where they actually live. Obviously, they don't live at the address if the property is vacant. So they have a number of chances to remediate those conditions. Again, as I mentioned, if they choose not to, it ends up in the hands of the redevelopment authority through eminent domain. It would begin our process of rehabilitation ourselves. So you can go ahead. Again, it is not our preference to act as property managers through this program, but sometimes it does end up that way. In which case we have our inspectors first enter the property after it's acquired by the redevelopment authority. They seal and secure the property, make sure it's safe for the community. Oftentimes these properties are sitting unlocked with broken windows, acting as a blight to the community and a danger, potential hazard. They put together a scope of work for what would have to be done to bring the property back up to code and bring it back into the community in collaboration with the municipality. So your input would be valued, especially if it's a property that's not a straightforward residential home, where it might be a mixed use or commercial property, that your input would be valued. What do you want to see this become? So again, that scope of work is put together. We put together some proposed plans in collaboration with the municipality. You can go ahead. At which point we would have our inspectors assemble a request for proposals. Again, it would include all of those details for what has to be done to bring the property back up to code. We can get pretty specific with some of those end use details. And then this would be released to the public and publicly advertised, at which point we would receive responses, whether it's from nonprofit organizations, private organizations, whoever chooses to respond to the specific elements laid out in that request for proposals. We have a site visit. They can determine whether this is something that's worth pursuing for them. As a public organization, we always lose money on these properties. We are not profit driven. We receive grants to acquire properties like this. So we're able to sell the properties not for profit for ourselves, but for a better end use. Though we aren't getting profit, it might end up being better through that. By responding to by submitting a proposal, those developers would then enter into a development agreement, whichever one we end up selecting to acquire the property and rehabilitate it. They would enter into a formal development agreement with the redevelopment authority. This would be recorded at the recorder of deeds, so we can hold them to the standards laid out in the RFP and in their proposal submission. So we can make sure they're doing exactly what they said they were going to do. And if they choose not to, we could take back the property, though oftentimes these developers do move forward and complete the property as laid out in that development agreement. You can go ahead. Again, this is just the rehabilitation phase. After it's sold to that developer, they currently own the property. As again a public organization, we require things like lead clearance. We do radon testing to make sure these properties are truly safe for the public. Obviously, the municipality would be doing inspections as well, but we like to do ours just to have sort of that double standard of making sure we are, doing our own tests. You can go ahead. And finally, after the rehabilitation is completed as laid out in that development agreement, depending on what the decided end use was, we would either sell to an owner-occupant, if you chose for, or if the developer submitted something, we want this to become a rental, depending on what the RFP laid out, that could be an option as well. It's all up to what the municipality decided on the front end, what you want to see that property become. This is not a program I typically present, so that's really everything I have for you. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question. So if you said that you guys would help find the property owner if we couldn't find the property.
Yes.
So if we were not successful finding them and we did everything, what other areas, what areas do you guys have to go and find these?
So we work with our legal team who are often pretty good at finding the property owners. I recently identified somebody in, I think, North Carolina who was previously in Texas, and I was able to send mail to them so we could keep the program moving forward. We like to make sure we're able to get in contact with these property owners if possible. The program will keep moving forward. However, we aren't going to get to the point of eminent domain unless we are able to get in contact with this property owner and they're aware of what's going on with their property.
So if they are not able to be found, what happens then?
We haven't really encountered a situation where we're not able to find them at all, so I couldn't really speak to that.
Any other questions? Mike?
Okay. It's a fine presentation if you're not used to presenting this.
Yeah, it's
good
normal.
job.
Other programs.
I'm always puzzled by acronyms. What's an RFP?
Oh, I apologize. That's a request for proposals.
Okay.
You know-
It's just me.
No.
It always
That's
confuses
something
me.
Okay.
Okay.
It's just a document we put together, like I said, lays out the scope of work, all of the requirements that are detailed on the front end by the municipality and required through our standards as a redevelopment authority. And then it's responded to. We sort of describe how you have to respond in submitting a proposal for the property's rehabilitation. Or in some cases, demolition, because some properties, we do structural engineering tests, and some properties, unfortunately, cannot be saved.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Well, thank you very much. It was a very
Absolutely.
good presentation,
Thank you.
especially since you're not used to doing this. We
All right.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course.
Now we will move on to the next item under Public Welfare and Public Works, which is the presentation of the sewer rate study.
And as they come up and get settled and everything, we bring their presentation up. I just want to remind council, this was, it was a couple months back now that council approved us going forward with a sewer rate study with our sewer engineers, GHD. Nancy and Ryan have done a great job. They've been back and forth with Les and I a few times with some tweaks. So we're excited to have them here this evening. But I just wanted to remind council of that.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Go ahead.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you. My name's Nancy Adams. This is Brian Corsello. We work with GHD. We work with Les on multiple wastewater-oriented projects. And recently we were commissioned to do a sewer rate study. We do these for many of our municipal clients. There's a lot of different rate structures you can implement. In talking with both Les and Rebecca, we have found that in Millersville particularly, there wasn't a good history of how rates were calculated in the past. Was there a model ever developed? What kind of metrics are used? Those answers couldn't really clearly be questioned, so that's why we put this study together. We developed just an Excel-based model to kind of look at where your rates are now, look at where they need to be to meet certain revenue goals for funding capital projects and so on. So that's what the report kind of summarizes, and there's a bunch of tables in there. But to start, next slide. This first slide just shows the rate history within Millersville, and as you can see, There's two different rates. There's the residential rate and the commercial rate, and both of those, there's not a smooth kind of increase throughout the history. You know, it's kind of gone up and down and up and down, and that's not common. A lot of times when you think of all of your utility bills, look at that 20 years ago versus today, it's been a slow, steady kind of increase. So that just shows kind of the volatility, I guess, of the rates over the years. The last rate adjustment was in 2007, which is quite a while ago now. You know, more commonly you'll see rates adjusted every few years. So like I said, we just wanted to produce a model that the borough can use to more sustainably manage rates moving forward. Okay, next slide. So Millersville has a flat rate structure. All of the users are billed the same rate. It's not based on usage except for the commercial users. That's pretty typical. So, you know, you just look at the total expenses, look at the total users, everyone pays the same rate. So if you're a user that you're only one EDU, you're gonna pay the same rate as your neighbor, regardless of how much water you use. Commercial is based on a base plus usage model, where there's a base rate that is based on fixed expenses that all of the commercial users would pay, and then they'll pay a cost per gallon for the amount of usage they use for whatever business that they own. Okay, next, please. So in our model, there's various inputs that we put into the model to show the different expenses and revenues, and this slide just shows the different revenues that we pull right out of the borough budget to detail the expenses and also detail the revenues for setting the rates. And these are all on the large spreadsheet within the report that you have. Next slide. And within the model, we do make some assumptions because we set the model so that it projects rates for a 10-year period, I believe, in your case. And so we want to take a look at growth. If you're expecting a lot of growth, you would see more revenue from those rates and so on. In the borough's case, like many boroughs, they're pretty built out. There's not a lot of room for development. So throughout our calculation, we assume 4 new EDUs, which is an equivalent dwelling unit, Mike, so that you know what that stands for. Basically, it's a single family unit.
I knew that one.
So we assume 4 per year. We assume that the commercial EDUs and consumption remains the same throughout the projection period. We applied a 4.5% increase in expenses per year to account for inflation. That is variable. I mean, we kind of just discussed it with Rebecca and Les and thought that that would be a good inflation rate to use for current conditions. And then we also set a target net revenue of between $350,000 and $500,000, and that's to help fund capital projects moving forward. And then we also, along with this rate study, we looked at the capital reserve fund and that budget and the projection based on the rates that are set. So we assumed 100% of the net revenue would be transferred to the capital reserve fund. Again, we applied a 4.5% increase to the administration and management of that fund, and we assumed the capital operations expenses of about $1 million per year. And that's all just based on input from the borough, and those really do impact what those rates are going to be. So, you know, if you see a big jump in a rate from one year to another, you want to look at those expense lines and the capital reserve budgeting goals that we have. Okay, next slide. And then we came up with 3 different sewer rate scenarios. One scenario looks at the revenue that you see with your existing rates, $110 flat rate. The second scenario looks at the minimum calculated rate. So that rate is a calculated rate that is based on those revenue goals that we want to meet each year. And then the adjusted, or excuse me, the minimum calculated rate is such that the revenue will and expenses zero out. So you're not building up any reserves under the minimum calculated rate. And that does differ a little bit from your existing rates just because there wasn't a model, there wasn't a projection or model set up before. And then the adjusted rates looks at that target revenue of $350,000 to $500,000 per year and what your rates need to be in order to meet that target revenue. Next slide. Ryan, do you want to
Yep, thank you,
take
Nancy.
over?
So we're going to dig into the actual Excel model a little bit here. So shown on the screen, this is just a summary of those adjusted rates that Nancy was just referring to for the next 10 years. So this would assume that there's a increase every 2 years, starting in 2025. You'll notice that most of these fall around about 12.5% increase for every adjustment. And this is pretty high due to the fact that these rates have remained unchanged for 17 years. And after experimenting with the model, we've kind of just found that that 12.5% number allows for an adjustment every other year and not every year, while also meeting that net target of about $350,000 to $500,000 per year. These incremental increases are preferred because it makes it easier for the residents and the commercial EDUs to anticipate and plan for these adjustments every other year. And then also maintaining that same percent increase across the different rate types also simplifies the adjustments when they come around. And then in order to have sufficient margins between the minimum calculated rates and the adjusted rates, they're set up to mostly be exceeding those minimum rates, which we'll go over in the next slide, please. So this slide on the screen shows a comparison of the current Millersville rates to surrounding rates, specifically like Lancaster area, suburban, Lidditz. They have very similar, if not higher rates per quarter. These are all based on a 200 gallons per day per EDU, which is typical for the Millersville Borough.
Yeah, so the base plus usage bills that are shown up here are calculated based on a 200 gallons per day for usage. With flat rates, you don't have to kind of do that conversion, but with the base plus usage, we wanted to have it to be like an apples to apples comparison with the borough residents. So yeah, you can see the Millersville Borough has very competitive rates. The lowest out of that little grouping that we've seen, and even when you look at the adjusted rates over the next 10-year period, 6-year period, you can see that though it is an increase, it is still not out of line with the other rates that your neighbors are paying, and keeping in mind that they will likely also be increasing rates throughout the years to come.
Next slide, please. So this shows more of a breakdown of that model for those three scenarios for the existing minimum and the adjusted. The existing, you can see up top is in the blue. You can see right now, they are above those minimum rates in orange, but in a couple years, the revenue will dip below if there is not an increase. And then the rows in the green are those adjusted rates that kind of expand upon that previous table that was shown for the projected adjusted rates, and also shows that projected revenue in that $350,000 to $500,000 net revenue range that we had discussed previously. Next slide, please. So this table is more of a summary of those revenues for those three scenarios. Obviously, the minimum rates, there is no revenue for that. The existing rates, as I mentioned before, you can see in a couple of years that dipping below zero if nothing changes based on our assumptions with rising expenses due to the inflation rate that we assumed, and then the row for the adjusted rates at the bottom there. As you mentioned before, it's been a while since the borough has had a rate adjustment, but in order to keep up with the rising costs of labor, materials, and services, we feel that it is necessary that they do have an adjustment soon. About 70% of the revenue for the sewer operating fund comes from the residential and the commercial sewer charges every year. That remaining 30% that they receive is very volatile and that fluctuates from year to year, so they can't really rely on that for their budget planning purposes. Additionally, the proposed rate increase schedule provides the borough with a starting point for the rate adjustments that will provide funding for operational expenses and also capital projects. Planning for, like I mentioned before, those rate adjustments every other year simplifies that planning process for the adjustments and also helps to buffer the rate increases for the residents and the commercial EDUs. As I also mentioned previously, maintaining that same percentage, about 12.5% that was proposed, provides a bit of consistency. It also provides sufficient margins to meet that revenue goal, and then also simplifies the adjustment without needing to determine different percentages between the different rate types. And then also, this model assumes minimal growth and almost no increase in revenue from their other sources. So these adjusted rates provide a pretty conservative representation of the resulting revenue they can expect for the sewer charges to account for any potential unforeseen changes in the operating fund over the next couple of years. And, any questions from?
Thank you. Does anyone from Public Works have a question about this?
Yeah, just to spell things out a little bit, school taxes, we had a big problem with that in the 90s when we renovated the school. It's hard to argue that we have a pretty good deal right now compared to our neighbors. That's really hard to argue. So every other year, that would turn into maybe a 6% increase every quarter, rather if it's 2 years. No one wants to pay more money, but I think to stress that we're in pretty good shape compared to our neighbors, that's an important factor to look at. Is this just a range, like would this 12% continue, or is this just a model you have here? When we look at that 12% over what the next eight years?
Yeah, so if you want to maintain that revenue of $350,000 to $500,000 a year, having that transferred to the capital fund, then that roughly 12.5% increase every 2 years is kind of the benchmark. That's where you need to be in order to meet those revenue goals.
And I guess if would that put us in line with our neighbors then, or will that 12% make our rates?
Can you flip back to that slide? Yeah. One forward. So the bottom 3 lines,
Yes.
those show the adjusted rates, the Millersville residential for 25-26, 2027-2028, and then 2029-2030. Those are the adjusted rates, so that factors in that 12.5% increase for those periods. So you can see that even with those increases, you're still
looks pretty good
in line, right? And
also,
also, most likely they will be raising their rates as well. So right now it looks pretty good as far as what everyone else is paying.
And this does or does not account for the development that's happening. This does not, because we've got, because we have a big development, 55 and older community being built now, and then we've got another large community.
Right. So this is assuming minimum growth. So this is only assuming 4 new connections each year. So if you're looking at more connections, so that's a conservative approach. Like if those developments were never to happen, then this is what you would see. If those developments are pretty sure to happen, then that rate would come down a bit because you'd have a larger base to pay for the expenses that are factored into the calculation.
So for the typical taxpayer, like the families, it's not going to raise their, it's going to be on the commercial side where the rates change. If we get new developments.
Right, yes, yeah, yep.
Does anyone have any other questions? Mayor?
With what frequency do these other municipalities adjust their rates over the past 10 years?
Well, everyone's different, I will say that for sure, and it depends a lot on your debt situation and 5-year capital improvement plans and so on, but ones that I work with, we typically look at anywhere from a 2, 3, and 5-year cycle to adjust your rates. Most commonly, we see every 2 to 3 years. We have some clients that look at them every year and make adjustments annually, but more commonly, I would say every 2 to 3 years.
But according to what you have up there, our rates haven't changed in 17 years. The other municipalities may have changed within the last 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I don't know because I don't know the history of, that the last rate adjustment was made in 2007, but I think it was more like reactive rather than looking forward. So
that was a reduction.
Yeah.
It was not an increase.
Right, but
So you can't even count that as a.
Right. And I think it was based reactively in the sense that you had a big project, you had all this debt all at once, and you needed to set a rate to pay for that. I'm guessing. I mean, you can.
To answer your question, Mayor, LASA raised their rates 3% a year. Every year, 3%. I'm a LASA customer.
Les, do you have anything else you'd like to add to this, and comments at this time would be a good time?
I think they did a very good job with the information they were given. We have no idea. We have a bunch of development out there. How many homes are built where you're at, Mary Ann, right now? 8?
Oh,
Is there 8?
4,
8 built.
8.
8 built.
8 built.
2 occupied.
2 occupied. So the same way with Crossgates, there's 2 built, 1 sold, and 2 more being built. They haven't been sold yet. So even though they're on the book for 69 units where you're at, 70 units where Crossgates is at, it's going to take probably 7 years before they're built out because the market's, who can afford that?
Mm-hmm.
So same way with Funk's Farm and this other one. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to trickle in. So you can't be relying on that to be the savior. It's not going to be the savior. We have to do something now to keep us afloat. The costs have gone crazy on just normal chemicals and everything. Everything's going crazy. Quicklime went up 80% in 1 year. And that's on a county contract. I have no control over those chemicals. That's gone through a county contract. So there's some things that went really crazy and some things aren't too bad, but we're eventually going to wither on the vine if we don't do something. And half our system is still brick manholes and VC pipe or clay pipe. So we just did Charlotte Street and Creighton because of that. So there's always going to be something that needs addressed. What I'm hoping that we can do is avoid taking a bond issue out now because a bond is not the way to go right now. They're expensive. We'd like to be able to prioritize and take care of our worst problems and be able to do that without taking a bond out. I don't want to take a bond out again. Christ, it took us forever to get rid of this last one. We kept kicking the can down the road. I don't want to get in that situation constantly. So I think what we can save for the rainy day and be smart about what we do fix for the next 5 years. And I think, we still have a little money if something totally goes haywire that we can still handle it without doing some type of bond issue. I mean, that's being going about the smart way as far as I'm concerned. And there's nobody going to run this facility cheaper than what we can. I always hear about selling the system. We're debt free. We're debt free right now. Nobody's going to run this system cheaper than we can ourselves. You want to talk about a rate increase? Sell it. You'll see a rate increase. You'll say, man, that's crazy. I'm just saying. There's. That's all I got.
And Wes, would you say that being realistic and looking at these figures and so on, whether people like it or not, that a rate increase is almost necessary for us to keep going?
Yes.
I mean-
Here's my recommendation. They have this out, they did a good job and did this out for a number of years. I think they have a model here now at, I think you do that first one in 25, that 12.7 or 12.2, I believe it is. You do that, and towards the end of that second year, you look at the new development that's in the system, because now you can count those ratepayers into your system now, and decide whether or not you need to do another 12% or where we're at. I mean, but honestly, I think you do the first one, and then you have time to see where you're at, and also see how many new customers actually came on. Do we have 40 new customers by then? I don't know. Maybe we will. You know, that's not going to make a big dent, but that's, you know, more money that we didn't have before. So maybe those other rates can, the ones down the road can be lowered. You know, you can lower that, or I don't know. It's just it's a shame there's not a whole lot of funding out there, other, you know, grant money or any type of federal money to help sustain the systems anymore.
Does
Yeah.
anyone have any questions for Les? Rebecca, did you want to?
Just to help frame the conversation just a little bit, two just things I wanted to add in. One, the fantastic rate model that GHG has put together for us is helpful not only for now, but it's helping us have a calculation for the future, so that the rate is not just pulled out of a hat, but we have a calculation to fall back on when Winfield is more developed out and we have a solid idea of how many folks are coming in there. When the same thing with Crossgates, when we have solid numbers, then we can be plugging it into this model. So this, in a way, it's like we have this beautiful calculation right here that we can be using for the future as things change. The other thing, and I think the timing of when the sewer rate study has been done is really great, because it's going to frame really well when we jump into the budget conversation. Something that's going to be new this year that I'm excited to show you all is work that we've been doing on putting together a 5-year CIP plan. That's not something that the borough has put forward in budgets before, but it's something that I'm really excited about, because I think it's going to help us frame all of these conversations, not just thinking about what does 2025 look like, but helping us say, what does 2029 look like, and how are we preparing for that using calculations like this, using sewer rate changes, using what Luke is going to talk about in terms of really thinking strategically about how we're getting interest on our accounts. Because I want to really frame this year's budget around thinking about the next 5 years. So I'm excited to bring that to you all, because I think that having a capital improvement plan as part of the budget will help bring everything that we're talking about in terms of sewer rates and other things, help to really bring it all together into one comprehensive conversation. So that's also why the timing of this is really ideal. And I don't know if we noted it as a part of the presentation, but this would be a rate change suggestion for January 1st, not for this calendar year.
Right.
That's right.
That was said,
January
2025.
1st, yeah.
And I would assume that then at that time, or December or sometime, to get ready for the 2025 year, that Public Works would be again discussing this and passing a rate increase, which would then go to council. Is that correct?
That's correct. So depending, of course, how this conversation continues to go, and we certainly aren't expecting a decision this evening necessarily. If you want to, that's great. But as this conversation continues to go, once you feel like you're at a point to make a decision, then we'll go forward with the plan of working through the steps to implement a rate change. But either way, whether we did that next week or we did it in November, it would still go into effect in January. I will say that, you know, sooner is better when it comes to planning for the budget, because we are literally inputting budget numbers every day. So sooner is better on that, so that we can be properly prepared. But yes, depending on how this conversation continues to go, we'll be able to move forward with the process of getting resolution and ordinance in front of you all.
Okay, thanks, Rebecca. I would like to ask my committee what you think. In all honesty, I have talked and met with Les about the sewer issues and the whole 9 yards. And this presentation tonight is very well done, thank you. And I think it really lets us know the direction as a borough that we need to take, whether we like the increase or not, and nobody likes increases in what they have to shell out, but this is necessary. And does my committee feel you would like to make a motion on this tonight, or do you want to wait?
I think tonight would be, in my opinion.
Then if you'd like to make that motion.
I will make a motion that we do the price
Sewer increase.
on sewer.
Yeah, so I'll second it.
And it's motion by Darlene and seconded by Mike. Everyone from the committee in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, then Rebecca, that will come out of committee to council.
And we'll start putting together all of the proper paperwork.
Okay, that's good, because I agree with you. I think sooner is better rather than later.
It doesn't mean we like it.
Nobody
No.
We've had quite a good haul.
Really?
Yeah, we've had a really good haul.
Yeah.
So, you know, and we know it's time, and we've been kicking the can down the road, like Les said, long enough. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on public welfare and public works is discussion of Pavilion A naming and or borough naming policy. It had been brought to our attention that, I have to find my papers here. There is a desire to name something down in the parks. And so I believe Karen is here this evening. So Karen, I would like to see if you have any comments first, please.
I don't have much comment on whether or not to name it. I think that the commission did give our recommendation, and I don't have anything new to say on that. Not that we are opposed to a different vote from somebody else. What I do want to speak to is the possibility of getting a policy put in place to help us in future. So I do have a couple comments on that. That request to name it brought up a lot of discussion. It was not something that we said, oh, no, we don't want to do that. We had a lot of discussion. I believe you've been given a copy of a policy that the Parks Commission feels is in line with other local government entities' policies, and would provide specific points for all involved to take into consideration. One of the objectives of note in the version of a policy is to encourage public participation and input to best represent the interests of the area affected. The Parks Commission and Borough Council are made up of community members of varying generations and perspectives, and the opportunity for public weigh-in would ensure that all members can take into account additional public knowledge prior to a recommendation or decision. The criteria to be considered allows for various circumstances for which a naming may be requested. This provides clarity to a community member or organization looking to request a name, and also to Council and the Parks Commission in determining its acceptance or denial. The last portion the Parks Commission wanted to note in the proposed policy is the addition for written procedure or application for proposing a name for a property structure, etc. Supporting documentation would also be really helpful to fully prepare Council and the Parks Commission prior to a decision being made. The Parks Commissioners are very interested in ensuring our recommendations take into account the gravity of a person or organization's experiences while still adhering to criteria of future decisions that may need to be based on precedent. And that was one of the big parts of our discussions in making our recommendation. Because we didn't have set criteria, we were really weighing what is this going to say if we get a different sort of a recommendation that we didn't want to get backed into a corner and say, well, we approved that one, why aren't you approving this? Or you didn't approve this, why are you approving that? So that was one of the big discussion areas. So we were really hoping to get some criteria so that we can follow that. And that's where a lot of our recommendation had come from, in that discussion of, we don't know where this could lead to. So that's where we came from.
Because of this whole issue, I had requested that Rebecca do some research on this and get a policy written for the borough of Millersville, which is what you have.
Yes.
And I know that I requested all the people on Public Works to please read this before tonight so that we would have an idea what we are talking about. And I think the policy seems really good.
We thought so too.
Okay, and so I guess the question, Parks feels that it is as well?
Yes, we looked at that policy. We were talking about a couple different variations, and we really liked that policy. We thought that it was a really good base to go on, and it gave a really good, clear direction to make a decision without having to leave it up to chance of any public knowledge of the person or organization or any, like it really, we liked that one.
Right, thank you, and I thank you, Rebecca, for getting this together, because I think having a policy will take all the guesswork for everybody out of all of this. So if Parks is okay with this policy, then I will ask for a motion from.
No, I have a question.
Oh, you have I'm sorry,
I do have a question, that's okay. There is a statement in here that says, where the names of deceased individuals are being considered, a 3-year waiting period after the death of the individual must be observed before considering the name for commemoration and naming such amenity. I find that extreme because of how council works. We are like a revolving. People come in, people come out. So a 3-year period, we're going to have people that come on to council that aren't going to understand this, aren't going to know about this. I'm afraid it will get lost. So I'm just wondering if there can't be some modifications to it before we go ahead and say yes.
Can I just clarify one
Yes.
thing?
Yes.
The 3-year waiting period is from when that individual would pass away, if it was the choice to name after a past individual, not about council waiting 3 years from your discussion of it. Does that help clarify?
Okay, so in this case, it would be John Herr's death. In this case, because we're looking at a plaque to put out.
Sure.
So we would be looking at, he would need to be passed away for 3 years. It would be his death.
This is what I found in the research of other folks who have policies like this, is that they put in a waiting period from the person's death so that it's not potentially a decision that you then look back on if you even say,
No,
well,
I
thought about that.
I understand, but see, the timing is not good for me, because I'm thinking 3 years down the line now, who's going to be on council? Who's going to remember? Who's going to bring this back up? Does the clock, all of a sudden this gets signed and then we say, okay, now we're going to go forward, and where somebody's going to have to put it in a tickler file or something to bring it up in 3 years? I mean, because he just died.
Sure, no, again, this is just what others are doing who have policies like this, is they're implementing this to help it be something that is historic in nature, that you're naming after, if you're choosing to name after an individual, it's a more historic, you're making a decision for history's sake. Again, I think council could decide whatever direction you want to go with that.
Well, I'm not comfortable with that statement.
I have a comment too. We don't have to be like everybody else. And you guys are a committee, correct? You could probably vote to make an exception for someone. There's no person in my lifetime that would be like John Herr to Millersville. It just seems to me like he would be, we're going to make an exception for this, and we're going to make a policy. But we're going to make an exception for this guy. He is Mr. Millersville. And I don't quite understand why the committee couldn't have a vote and say, we're the committee, and this is what we're going with.
So we can, and I will speak a little bit more to that, and I did mention in my previous statement, without sounding generational or uninformed, we are, most of us at the time, we do have a new member on council, are between the ages of 30 and 40. We were not here or in this area or aware of a lot of what so many people in the community obviously experience.
That explains
so
part of it.
We did not, like I said, we were not looking to be callous or not take into consideration. We actually looking at it with a blank face that, okay, the information that we are presented, which is why we said supporting information in future would be very helpful, because to somebody who doesn't have those same experiences or maybe didn't grow up in this area and is moving in and still participating in Millersville Borough government, won't have that same perspective, and that is where a lot of what we came from is because we just didn't have that perspective. So we did not mean to offend anybody or go against what everybody obviously is such a beloved person in Millersville Borough. We just did not have that experience or that background knowledge to add to that. So when we made our vote at our last meeting about which policy, we chose to focus on the policy instead of going back because we still do, we've heard of what it is, but we have not experienced. So since it was a recommendation to council, we decided council can take that whichever way they feel most at heart with, and we will have a policy to go forward in future so that we don't encounter this again. We can have public opinion, we can hear more about what that person or organization would be so that we can make a better decision, not just based on what our knowledge might currently be.
Are you gonna have another meeting to vote on this? Or is your recommendation?
No, we, in this situation.
And it's council's now.
Right.
So in this situation.
Okay, so we could vote on to disregard the 3-year waiting period.
Right, you could.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
can I,
Yeah.
just to
I haven't
clarify-
read this document yet either.
Well,
so-
maybe that might
Yeah.
help a little bit,
Yeah.
because, and this was provided in the backup. One thing that is in here is that under this policy, the responsibility for naming borough property lies with borough council. Borough council may at any time go against your own guidance. So this is really a document for you all. This is a document to help you in thinking about naming. I will speak from personal experience that at previous municipalities of mine, this has worked very well because it helps you all make better decisions. You have all the information, and yes, it's always helpful to have commissions give their thoughts and feedback and recommendations, but ultimately the decision lies with council, and you can view this as a guide to help you make better decisions.
Okay, I agree. And when we talk about this, after we've all read the document, then I can make a motion and say, I'm making a motion that we disregard the 3-year waiting period, and we vote now. And then we could vote and
There's
agree
another-
if we agree.
There's another statement in there too, and it's towards the end. It says, the Borough Council will confirm property names by resolution. The Borough Council has 90 days from receipt of the letter to act on a recommendation. In the event no action is taken by the Borough Council within 90 days, the request is denied. Boy, I don't care for that at all. I want to have something follow up because things can drop through the cracks so easily. So there's just a couple of things on the wording here that I'm uncomfortable with.
I guess we should wait till we all, have you read it yet?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't.
So now, but now you know my concerns.
It was in the
Yeah,
backup.
yeah, okay.
Well, then I would say that what we probably need to do this evening is to table this and put it on a future agenda so that our committee and other council members as well might have an opportunity to weigh in on their concerns about this document. I do think that we probably are all in agreement with the fact that we need to move forward with adopting some sort of a policy so that we can solve these problems in the future.
Rebecca, I would like a copy of that document, please.
Yeah.
Joe, did you get a copy of it? Oh, well, she knows my particular
I
lack
can give
of
you an extra copy.
expertise.
Do
Thank
you want
you.
a physical? I have my copy if you want a physical.
Wait a minute, I might have.
Well, you want to keep yours, don't you?
But if you wanted to look at it now.
She'll get one.
I'll put you some extra.
She's not with the council, you know, or not on the committee, you don't have to worry about it, right?
Now, but we're eventually going to have to
Yes.
vote on it,
Yes,
so
we
we
are.
want us to know what I'm voting on.
Yeah, I'll print more.
Anything further on this topic? Okay, then I think we have a direction. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Karen. Now, review of the RV ordinance. Rob, this is something I questioned, I'll be honest with you, because I know that in the summer, I walk a lot in this borough and I see a lot of stuff. And I see a lot of boats and campers and trailers and motorhomes and whatever you want to call them. A tremendous number of people in the borough have them. And it seems to me that we could cut down on your work about warning letters to some of these people if there are some changes or something to this particular section of the ordinance. because there are many people who have theirs on the very back of their property, that they don't have them specifically housed under something. And I don't really think they need to. And there's other people who have them like on a corner, they have a corner property, and then the front of their house is here, and their driveway's on this side, and they have their camper parked there, and they have them parked there pretty much from, say, the middle of May to the middle of September, during the months that they're going to be camping and or boating or what have you. And I would just like to see us clean up this section of the ordinances to allow people to have their motorhomes and campers on their properties without having them housed specifically, but preferably in the back and certainly not parked on the street. So, Rob, what do you say that we might be able to do here?
Can I just
Yeah,
start?
go ahead, Rebecca.
So, and just so everybody's on the same page, in the backup, it was the highlighted section of the code, because it's really just that one paragraph that we're talking about, section G. That's the only really section that talks about RVs and related similar motor vehicles.
Right, it's only one small section.
That small section. So, Rob and I have, as it has been summer, come across a number of issues and a number of questions related to this section. And Rob and I read it over and over and over again, and you could probably come up with 5 different ways to interpret this paragraph. Which, as we all know, when it comes to an ordinance, if you can interpret it a lot of different ways, maybe we need to relook at the ordinance. So, in conversations with Rob and like you said, Chairman Garrison, that we brought it to you as this is just feeling challenging from a code enforcement perspective. I'll let Rob sort of talk more about the details, but I just wanted to frame it as this has been something that has been tricky this summer in dealing with, just because I think there's a lot of ways to look at this ordinance. So Rob can talk about some of the specifics we've dealt with this summer.
So a lot of people had their RVs, trailers parked on the side of their houses, boats, so forth, in the front of their property. This does allow you to have it in the rear, but it has to be behind the house. If it's motorized, it has to be on a parking pad because you can't park in the grass. But it does allow for it. I've been getting a lot of complaints about the new people that have brought these in. And then we sent them a bunch of warning letters to let them know, like, hey, this is what you got to do. And then they all have moved most of them have moved their equipment, but some of them have lot issues that they can't get it back there. So those people would be onto the zoning hearing board and ask them for relief if they want to do it that way, or they get built a garage or something to put it in, stored inside. But that's only because they don't have a back. No, they have no rear yard really, and that's over in Quaker Hill area.
So you're suggesting that people who, they probably store their things over the winter, some do, some don't, I guess, but you're saying then that if they cannot get it to the back of their property, that they need to build a building for it?
Well, that's kind of what this is saying, yes. It needs to be
I know, that's what this says.
behind the property, but I get it. This is a touchy subject because a lot of people have had these. I got a lot of kickback from these warning notices came out. It's all what you guys want to do, because if somebody moves in something and somebody doesn't like it, they are currently allowed to have it there, as long as it's in the back. It doesn't have to be behind the house, so it's not visible, but some neighbors are not happy with it because they think that they didn't move here to move into a recreational trailer park, is how they worded it to me. They moved here because, they didn't want to look at this kind of thing.
So are you suggesting that perhaps we just leave it as is and deal with it?
You can.
I think we're more suggesting clarifying the language.
Yeah.
It's very confusing.
And it's an old ordinance.
It needs to be clarified, is right, and it's old. I mean, I understand the line about no such equipment shall be used for living, sleeping, or housekeeping purposes and so on. And that needs to be in there, because there's people that probably try to do that.
That is.
And the stuff can't be parked on the street.
Yep.
It has to be on their property. But to require some people who do not have a separate building or whatever, or they have to put it to the side of their house because maybe there's no way to get it to the back. I think that we need to clarify the language, and I think it would cut down on your problems in the summer.
Well, it's hard to track that 48-hour thing when they don't have.
Right, exactly, because you can't go, yeah.
So that's pretty much why we moved towards the warning letter. I've had somebody was complaining about someone living in one of these, but it's, again, that's hard to catch when we allow for it to be there.
Well, there had been one that was travel trailer type thing, not a camper, but a motorhome type thing that was parked down on the corner of Her and Cottage, I think it was, for a long time. And I had complaints, people were telling me about this, I had brought that up before. Now it's gone. I don't know what happened to it, but it's gone. Yeah, I mean, and that, of course, is not acceptable.
Nope.
But
some people have lot issues where they can't get them back. There's one probably, it's all in Quaker Hills is where most of these issues are at.
yeah,
Because it's so tight, and some of these people are on corner lots, like you said, and can't get it into the rear.
well, and I
There
think
is no
too,
real-
we have to be careful about the people whose houses front on one street and they have theirs at the back of their property and there's an alley behind there. That doesn't, they are at the back of their property. They are doing what they're supposed to be doing, even though there's an alley there and
Yes.
people drive down that and they see that and then they think, oh, they've got their camper parked in the front. Well, they don't.
No, they don't. It's in the rear, and that's another thing. This is really tricky to to get because a lot of people
Yeah.
call in and complain about this, about when they see it, and it's new, they don't like it. But everyone that's been here forever and has had it there, they know that they know the rules and regulations, but they
Right.
don't follow them that well.
Well, I think, and it's just my opinion, so I'll ask the committee what they think, but I think maybe we need to do some rewording of this section to make it clearer so we don't have so many complaints or problems and we don't have to send out as many warnings. And we can reduce some of that because I'm sure you have better stuff to do with your time than that.
Does that need to go to our solicitor, or how does that?
If I may, I think what we're hoping from council would be authorization to sort of present to you at your next committee meeting some of our suggested changes to the ordinance wording wise,
That
and
sounds
then
good.
have you all review that, and then if you're amenable to those changes, then work with the solicitor to put together an ordinance to amend the ordinance.
I think that sounds very good. So, committee, are you okay with that? Okay, that sounds good, and then we'll plan on that, and that will go on the agenda for the first meeting next month. And, thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
And guess what? Public Works is finally done.
All right, back in the saddle.
Yeah, it's your turn.
Mr. Mayor, anything to report?
The only thing I want to say is next Tuesday night, National Night Out rescheduled. Please come out and join us out here behind the Borough Building, big parking lot. A lot of vendors are going to be here, free hot dogs. Please come out and join us.
Yes, please and thank you. Anything to report, Rebecca?
Yes.
I think you have a few things.
Yes. Many procedural, so hopefully I won't take up too much of your time. First thing I just wanted to note that it's not on here, but in your backup was the 2022 audits.
Thank you. Finally.
We pushed it through at the end, made some phone calls, we got it done. This evening, those on the Finance Committee received a printed out version, but we should be getting the fancy bound version, hopefully coming in the mail tomorrow. It was mailed out on Friday, so it should be here any day now. When I get the fancy printed out version, anybody who wants a copy of that, just let me know and I'll put it in your mailbox. And or you do have everybody has a copy of the digital at this point, so good there. And we're meeting tomorrow to finish the field work for on the agenda is request for approval to advertise the collection of refuse and recycling contract bids for next year. As you're all probably aware, we have a contract currently with Penn Waste for trash and recycling pickup. It is that time in the cycle when it is time to go out to bid. So we are prepared to get all of that taken care of, hopefully by, our proposal would be to get this out into the newspaper tomorrow and be able to open bids second week of September, which puts us in time for budget to know what we're looking at cost-wise for next year. So we're looking for approval this evening to go out to bid for our trash hauling service.
When does our current contract expire?
This year. End of this year.
End of this year, okay, very good. Questions from council? Very well. Then I'm looking for a motion to approve advertisement of the collection of refuse and recycling contract requests for bid.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Linda, seconded by Phyllis. Further discussion? Very well. All those in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Very well. Motion passes with unanimity.
Wonderful, thank you. That will be going out then this week. The next item on the manager's report is consideration of the Millersville University request for temporary street closure of a section of East Frederick Street on Saturday, September 21st for their homecoming block party. This is a slight change from their typical block party. Usually it's on, my understanding is usually it's more on green space, but they're looking to change it up this year and are looking, and you might be saying, why are they asking for street closure for the section of East Frederick Street that is part of campus, but it is technically still our road. So they do need to request permission to close that section of the street on Saturday. It is from George Street down to the Science Building, if you can visualize that section. So they are looking for permission to do that.
Will people be able to turn left on Frederick from George? Or is that intersection closed?
No, the intersection is open.
Intersection is open, okay. Other questions?
I have one question. I don't know how I missed this. Is it official we're not having the Millersville Parade this year?
Oh gosh, no.
Oh, I missed that. When
Same day,
was that decided?
September 21st. You all approved it a few months ago.
Yes, we did. That's just rumor.
Yeah, I thought it was a rumor that when the Millersville rep was here, but that's...
September 21st will be, this is the same day. Okay.
Yeah, okay, so we are having a parade.
Yes.
Okay, my neighbor said, why aren't we having a parade this year? And I said, I didn't hear anything about it, and so we are having a parade. Okay, good.
All right, other questions? All right, in that case, I'm looking for a motion to approve the temporary closure of East Frederick Street on Saturday, September 21st for the homecoming block party.
How long is it going to be closed for?
I believe it's 8 to 8 or something like that. Hold on, pull that for you. The request was, I'm sorry, it's 6 to 6. They will, of course, allow for any emergency vehicle to appear.
No problem at all. Any other points of discussion? Then I'm looking for that motion.
So moved.
Moved by Linda, second.
Second.
Seconded by Mike. Very well. Barring further discussion, all those in favor of approving the temporary street closure of East Frederick Street on the 21st, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, the next item we're very excited about. This is consideration of the awarding of the University Drive Stream Restoration Project to Flyway Excavating at the contract price of $165,935. This was the low bid for this project. As a reminder, this is the stream restoration project along University Drive. This was the project that we received the ARPA funding from the county. And we're very excited about the price that came in.
Yeah.
Very excited. We've heard very good things about this particular company. Actually, our solicitor was already aware of their good work in other places. So we're very excited about awarding this project, and we're looking for permission to award to Flyway Excavating.
Any points of discussion or questions on that? Very well. Seeing none, I am looking for a motion.
I'll move.
We'll give that one to Phyllis. A second? Seconded. Very well. In that case, all those in favor of awarding the University Drive Stream Restoration Project to Flyway Excavating at the contract price of $165,935, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Very well. Another one passing unanimously.
Thank you.
3 for 3.
Oh yeah, no, we're doing good. Next item is the request for approval to hire Jennifer Slover for the Police Secretary 1 vacancy with a start date of next Monday, August 19th. We were so lucky with this recruitment. We had over 40 applications, which, as you know, in today's day and age, that's hard. I mean, really hard. So and our pool was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, we could not absolutely have asked for a better pool of candidates. We probably could have picked the top 5 and all would have been great. But we are so excited about Jennifer. She brings with her 19 years doing 911 radio dispatch, and lots of experience in all of the different systems that our police department uses. Just a standout candidate. So we are really, really excited. And we are excited that she is willing to start next week and have no issue with there not being 2 police secretaries in that front office. So yay. So we're looking for approval to hire Jennifer for this position. Her resume was in your backup.
Yes, I'm looking at it. Questions from council? Seeing none, I am looking for a motion.
So move.
All right. Second from Darlene. In that case, all those in favor of approving the hire of Jennifer Slover to the Police Secretary 1 vacancy starting on Monday, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Very well. Motion passes.
All right, thank you. All right, this is more of an informational item. As you're all aware, as council, you all have a public comment policy that you all follow for every meeting. It involves a short write-up that our council president reads before any public comment section. Recent advice coming from the Pennsylvania State Association of Boroughs has suggested that although councils across the state, of course, have these guidelines that they use, that they actually be posted in multiple places, including the website and actually physically in the council chambers. So to remedy this and to make sure that the guidelines that you all already follow are properly posted, we have suggested putting them on the website with the language that we already are pretty familiar with, and then also having it posted would be on where you see attention meeting maybe live streamed, also putting it right there underneath of that for anyone coming in. So we just wanted to see if there were any questions about that, but to let you all know that we're trying to follow new guidance coming out from the state.
Doesn't sound as though a motion is required for this one, but are there any questions about it? All right, I think it's a good idea.
Perfect. The next item then is just a project update. Maybe you all have been seeing our construction crews out for the ADA ramp replacement project. They, even with the rain last week, and Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong, they're doing great. They're completely on track to be done with Cottage Avenue by the school year starting next week, which we're very excited about. So far, though, we're really happy with their work, and we just wanted to let you all know that even with the rain last week, they're still very much on track to finish this project with the school year starting.
Excellent. Good news.
New ADA ramps all throughout the borough. Last item is just a friendly reminder. Saturday in the park this year is September 14th. This is a wonderful chance for lots of folks in the community to come to Freedom Memorial Park and enjoy some live music and a lovely day put on by the Millersville Business Association. friendly reminder. There'll be lots of games, so bring your families, bring your children. It'll be lots of fun. And I think I'm done.
All right, very good. Uncharacteristically, I have a few items. I was approached, early last week by an individual who was asking about the use of our space here in council chambers. And we don't really have any rules guiding the use of this space. Sits empty most of the time. And I wanted to have a brief discussion with my fellow council members about what limits to place on the use of this space, if we're comfortable where we're at right now, or if other items that are of civic importance could also occur here. I know that our Historic Society meets in these halls, and we have at least on one occasion had an elected official address borough residents here in this hall a few years back, but I want to be very careful about what we say yes and no to, and right now we don't have any guidance. So in my specific example, we have an individual who is not an elected individual, but who is running for elected office that would like to have a chance to speak with individuals in the borough and use the council chambers for that purpose. I don't know how comfortable I am having an individual using these chambers for political reasons rather than governing reasons, but we don't have any guidance regarding that. So I wanted to, I guess, take the temperature of the room, see what my fellow council members thought about what appropriate uses for this space might look like. Do we, for example, feel that it is in the best interest of our citizens to allow individual candidates to have maybe not necessarily a town hall session, but a discussion session using this chamber when it's not otherwise in use? Let's start there.
I don't feel comfortable with political use. I don't feel comfortable to use the chamber for any fundraising.
Well, certainly not.
And I don't feel comfortable using this room with any kind of food or drink.
Well, of course not, yeah.
I think it could be used for anything informational. I don't have a problem with a question and answer period with an already elected representative or state senator. And I know that has happened. Scott Martin did a very nice question and answer here. And yeah, that's my opinion.
I'm not comfortable with any political parties coming in here. If they are representing a political party, either way, I'm not comfortable.
Whether they're elected or not?
If they're already elected, that's fine. But if they're not, if they're coming in, and I don't like that.
Perfectly fine.
I agree with what you both just said. If they're elected, it's a different ball game, but not keep politics out.
I'll be the oddball, because I think that it would be a great place. This is where we vote. We have people coming here to vote. So I know there was an occasion where somebody had talked to me about having not just one party, but just say council we're going to have what, 3 or 4 people coming up next year. So it'd be nice to have all parties that are running to sort of like get to know your candidate, so that people can come in here and talk to the candidates and get to know. Not everybody wants to walk the streets, not everybody's home when they knock on the door, and people have questions, and that's, I think, is a great way. I'm not saying only have Democrats, I'm not saying only have Republicans, I'm saying meet your candidates, Republican and Democrat.
Well, the good news is you're not the only odd person out. I do think there is some value to the community. I agree with Marianne as far as this is not a place to do fundraising. This is not a place to have food and drink. This is not a place to have a raucous rally type event. But there is some, I feel, value to the community in being able to meet with individuals running for office, that kind of thing. You've been uncharacteristically silent.
That's because boy, have you ever seen me at a loss for words?
Never once.
Never once is right. I can see everybody's point here, and I can see the value of a meet and greet type thing, like Darlene was saying. I think there is some positives to that. I have to agree that I don't think we should have political things in here or fundraising things here. If you have an elected person here to speak about something, I think that's certainly okay. So I guess I have to say I'm kind of on the fence, and it would depend, you know, what was finally determined to be allowed.
Yes, I don't like the meet and greet aspect. I maybe could go for a debate.
There's an idea.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about here. There's some good points both ways, and after all, the public needs to hear what is going to be said and who they are going to elect. When you use the word raucous rally, I don't like that aspect of it, you know,
And there are plenty of places in the borough for an elected official to hold an event.
I'm kind of looking here, when you talk about a political event, to meet and greet the candidates. I'm not in favor of that, but even a debate, I'm looking out at the audience and I see 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people in the audience who are not employees. And of those people in the audience, I see 3 committee people, and I see 2 people who are already on, you know, committees that we have. I'm not too sure what kind of turnout you would get for council.
I don't know when it's.
I mean, it would be wonderful if we filled all the chairs like the Historical Society does, and, you know, you have to bring in extra chairs, but I don't, in the long run, I think it's gonna be moot.
Fair enough. And it doesn't sound like there's going to be any firm consensus one way or the other, but your mention of the Historical Society does bring up another point I wanted to raise. We have nothing on the books granting them use of this chamber, and I would like to see that change. The only thing we have among our ordinances and motions and so forth is permission for them to use this chamber as part of preparation for an anniversary event for Millersville itself.
I do know, because I was on council at the time, and because the Historical Society was my idea, and I incorporated it, that at the time, Dorothy Bender, and some of you remember, I see you nodding, remember Dot Bender, who recently passed away at 104. The park was hers. It was a relative of hers. She got to donate the money for the park. And she was wild about the Historical Society, and at the time, all the members on council joined. And I do believe that we came and asked if they would give us their blessing to meet, and this was so many years ago that this building was not even built. So I can probably dig up myself and Jack Gardner and Maggie Weidinger, and maybe a couple of people were on there to corroborate that. But you're probably right, it would be clean, and I think at this point, to disallow the Historical Society to be shooting yourself in the foot, if not the head, because one of our distinguished council people will be the September speaker. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is something where...
And I think it should be an exception. It's got a charter to inform and educate.
And it's non-political and so forth.
Not at all.
I entirely agree. It was a thing that was brought up because we were discussing use of the space and what kind of rules do we have in order to use this space. And really the only example that wasn't a committee or the council itself is really just the Historic Society. And there's nothing necessarily in the books granting that privilege. And I would like us to draft something to grant them that permission. And moving on to part B of my report, We do have a 9/11 Memorial Showcase. I've been informed, and Rebecca, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, that there's been a feeling that the display within should be changed or altered in some way, which is perfectly fine. However, we do have a feature within that showcase for which we are legally responsible. It's a piece of the World Trade Center wreckage following the September 11th attack that obviously we want to handle with reverence and put in a place of prominence. It's currently in that display case. If we're going to discuss any changes to that display case, we should also have a discussion about what happens with this particular artifact.
Since I'm older than dirt, I remember when we planned this building, the Historical Society was already incorporated and already meeting at the other building, and the plan was, when they did the specs and everything, that display case would be for historical displays, but then Ed Arnold or Andy, and my husband would know more about that than I do, managed to get those artifacts, and I think there was a promise made at the time that we would always display them. So I think we have to display them. When we got them, we accepted them with those conditions. But it's kind of boring to just see the same thing there. I noticed, Phil, that you put a display over at the police department, an historical display over there.
I had nothing to do with that display.
Oh, okay.
I was the chief of police.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a nice touch.
It's a nice display. It's nice to look at and see the history. And of course, our walls here have some historical displays.
I love that document over there.
You do?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's my favorite.
I want to keep that there. I want to keep it on display so I can remember the people. I want to remember that day. I want that on display. My opinion.
I absolutely agree.
Linda, we can't not display
It has to be
since we
displayed. It's
agreed to do
required.
that when we took it.
Well, let's
Yeah.
just say the only tasteful option is to continue to display it. We could always return it to the Port Authority, but that would be wildly embarrassing. So,
do that.
We also found documents that said it would be a little expensive to send steel back.
regardless, yes, I think I can speak with council, just looking around at all of you, that we will continue to display that. But I believe there is a request. I haven't received one yet personally. Phil, if you want to help me out.
There is no requirement as to the size of the display.
That's correct.
And I spoke to Rebecca about this, and we kind of agreed that that we could use maybe half of it, the right half. Leave the chunk of the plane there and arrange, see if we get all the pictures over one side, and then I contribute stuff to the right side.
We can always refresh it too. I mean, refreshing anything, changing photos or changing wording or something's always a good thing.
If I may,
By all means.
President, I think what we're looking for from the borough's perspective is we certainly don't want to necessarily bug you with building related questions. That's why you hire staff. But just because of the nature of this particular display and the item in that particular display, I wanted to make sure that council had a chance to think really hard about it. And as you all have seen, and as you mentioned, there's a new display over on the police side with some history there. That wasn't terribly challenging either for us to purchase and have that put together. So there is space if we wanted additional displays. We are very lucky that we have this beautiful building with additional space. So there's nothing against also adding displays as well. So I think we're just looking for direction on how council feels about this particular display and this particular item.
I certainly don't mind refreshing a display personally. We don't have any written guidance on the use of that display case or anything of that nature. as long as especially that piece of our history, our shared history, is handled with reverence and respect. It continues to be an attractive display and a showpiece for the borough. I don't know that I have a strong opinion about additional displays, as long as it doesn't begin to start cluttering up our walls or junking up the place. Other thoughts or opinions? All right, this is an item I think we should, let's see, how do I want to handle this? When we talk about use of the room, let's also have something written up about use of the display case, just so we can put it all in writing and out there.
I can put together for the next meeting both a draft resolution, I think if I got it correctly, a draft resolution for Historic Society usage based on that
chambers,
one
yes.
we had, okay. And then a second draft resolution on display case. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes. Sorry. What's in that display case is very important. The display case itself feels very small to be discussing, but yes, let's clarify the usage of the space.
And I'm also happy, sorry if this didn't occur to me until now, I'm happy to reach out to other boroughs and townships and see if they have any.
Recommendation.
Okay, perfect, great.
That's it for what I have. Yep, we are about to do that announcement. So at this time, council will hear any comments. Blocking me? Comments, requests, or concerns from members of the public related to items on the agenda or other matters. You will have 5 minutes to speak. Please either come to the microphone to speak or ask that the microphone be brought to you. When you come and approach, please give your name and a general address for the record.
Okay, this is not notes. My name is Richard Franz. I live at 55 North Duke Street. I have a couple grandchildren now, real small ones, but I'm concerned about the safety which was brought up today. Back when I moved here in '69, we had so much trouble with college kids getting hit by cars that they had to deal with it. We look back in our history and what did the college do? Through the years, they put crosswalks across. That is against state law for people to go through it. We have places in our borough that we should do the same thing. Why is a college just one space and our kids are not worth the time? So I'm saying maybe we should put, even where our people control the traffic, they should be at those places so they have the law on their side. When a car runs that intersection or that crosswalk, it's against the state law anyway. So we give our crosswalk guards some power or some backup reinforcement. I just think that maybe even they could wear cameras like our police or have a camera in some of these places that we can enforce the law. That kind of stuff gets around. And you have the police moving around once in a while during that time. People are aware of the police. It's a very good deterrent. Every time you see a police car, and I don't like the ones that are gray and you can't tell what they are. I like the ones that the person's eye catches to them, and if they're going to break the law, then they really deserve to be nailed. But I'm just saying, we have the power and the authority to protect our kids. My dad used to say, he was a World War II veteran of the Battle of the Bulge, and he says, when we say we can't, that means we don't want to. And that always struck me. And then a real good professor of mine that passed away years ago, he said, the good is the enemy of the best. We can do better. We always can do better. Okay, thank you.
Rob, thank you. Other comments, questions, or concerns from the audience?
Hello, Council. My name's Dave Rhodes. I live on 25 Wallback Road. I moved back into Millersville about a year ago, and I never had a chance to ask my father or anyone here this question, but has the council ever thought about putting a cardboard dumpster somewhere out here that our community members could put cardboard in, and that could be some source of revenue? Because when I go to work or coming home from work, especially on trash days, you see cardboard blowing around, and I thought this might be a way of possibly lowering that amount of clutter blowing around in our town. So I didn't know if that was ever brought up.
Well, I help out at the loft, and we pretty much, we take a dumpster full of cardboard over to Manor Township to theirs. So it's a good point. I mean, if it, I don't know if it's a revenue source or not. I mean, someone has to pick it up and make money out of it. So it'd be back here in the back lot where we store the bags would be a perfect spot to have it.
I came from Maytown, and up there at their township building, they always had a dumpster, and they would get money for that, and that was one source of revenue for them.
Every week we fill a dumpster. Every week with
just a thought.
Is cardboard not recyclable?
No, it is recyclable.
Well,
It is
then
made up by
we have a
Specific
contract.
types.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
no,
we have a
big
contract.
boxes, yeah.
Well, you can break them down, but I
Yeah.
think you have to be really careful because that figures in to the price of trash collection. And so they too, our trash collector makes money from our recyclables, including our cardboard. So if you put something out there to collect cardboard, you might be in violation of the contract with the trash hauler. Rebecca,
That's a
would
good
you like
point.
to
I
speak
think
to that?
the trash hauler might like the idea that it's going somewhere else because those guys come by and not everyone breaks it down. I watch them picking it up, but that's a good point that if it's going to make that price go up, not a good idea. But
We can certainly talk
Yeah.
about this. It is part of our hauler contract.
yeah.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ritz. Anything else from the audience? All right, very good. In that case, I don't see any need for us to adjourn to executive session, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
That took forever. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mike. All those in favor of adjourning, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? All right, we can get out of here.